The morning mist clung to Newton like a fine silk shawl, blurring the edges of Georgian mansions along Maple Street. In the kitchen of one such home, the aroma of blue bottle coffee wove through the sizzle of organic bacon. Elizabeth Wilson moved with practiced ease, the soft creak of the walnut floor announcing her husband's approach. Michael's kiss on her shoulder was feather light, his Tom Ford suit a testament to the Wall Street day ahead. "Early start?" he murmured, his voice honeyed. "The Brunswick contract in Brooklyn," she said, pride warming her words. $35 million. It's one of Boston's most significant historic listings. Boston's top agent, he smiled, a perfect portrait of spousal admiration. Elizabeth, buoyant, didn't see the cold calculation in that smile, nor did she note how the morning light caught his Patek Philippe not with warmth, but with a metallic gleam. Driving her Jaguar along the Charles River, her thoughts drifted to her father. The stroke 3 years ago had imprisoned the titan of Wilson Construction in a silent world. At Champs Care Center, Nurse Jennifer's smile was a familiar comfort. In the sunlit suite, Elizabeth took his frail hand, filling the quiet with stories of deals and new restaurants, believing he heard every word. The change in her sister, Caroline, had been subtle at first. A promising nurse, she quit her job at Brooklyn Private, citing a need for space. Soon, she was a constant presence in Elizabeth's home, adorned in new Prada, her Jimmy Choo heels tapping a frequent rhythm on the foyer marble, especially on days Michael worked from home. "Michael's teaching me about investments," Caroline would say, her eyes alight with a strange, hungry spark. Elizabeth dismissed it as a phase, a sister's restlessness. She was wrong. The trap had already been sprung. The collapse came on a June evening. Returning from a celebratory dinner, Elizabeth found the Newton mansion hollow, silent, no note from Michael. Caroline's phone rang into void. A leaden dread propelled her to Champs, where her distraught mother waited with the devastating truth. $20 million had vanished from her father's safe. Michael and Caroline had vanished with it. All that remained was a $5 million charge on the Amex Black Card, the pitying glances of neighbors, and the hushed gossip at the Longwood Country Club. The divorce proceedings were a sterile, humiliating formality. Michael, having resigned from Goldman Sachs, had spirited every asset beyond reach. Elizabeth was left with mortgages, crushing care fees, and a betrayal that hollowed her out. "Money can be earned again," her mother Martha whispered, but the words were bandages on a bullet wound. The mansion was sold. She bought a modest condominium 10 minutes from Champs. Her world shrunk from $6 million to 1.2. The same Charles River flowed outside her window, now a reflection of a life dismantled. Elizabeth rebuilt with a ferocious, silent grit. Her father's care demanded $220,000 a month. She became a machine, up at 5, showing properties until 9, her phone a permanent appendage. She was driven not just by necessity, but by a cold need to prove something to the ghosts of her past. 2 years into this new life, the ghosts taunted her on Instagram. There they were, Caroline and Michael, in the royal suite of a 7-star hotel, toasting with champagne that cost more than a car, Monaco yachts, private shopping sprees in Paris. The caption, "A dream comes true, #billionaire lifestyle." Their escape was fueled by her father's stolen fortune. Friends urged legal action, but Elizabeth refused. A instinct, cold and certain, told her the full truth was not hers yet, that her father, in his silent prison, knew more. 5 years later, Elizabeth had reclaimed her title, becoming a legend in luxury real estate with annual volumes exceeding 9 figures. She moved to Back Bay, drove a Mercedes G63, her success a polished armor. And then, the cracks in their paradise began to show. Caroline's posts grew sparse, then desperate. The glamour faded. Locations grew mundane. Rumors trickled in. A Birkin pond on Madison Avenue. Michael's Patek Philippe on the secondary market. Whispers of failed schemes in Monaco. Of days lost in casinos. Then, silence. Their last image was a tired photo from a Casablanca hotel. All anxiety and exhausted eyes. A decade after the theft, a call came from Champs. Her father was failing. Elizabeth rushed from a negotiation, but arrived too late. He was gone, his face finally at peace. As she and her mother prepared for the funeral at the opulent Brookline Chapel, an email from Caroline appeared. It went unread. On the day of the service, June light streamed through Gothic windows, illuminating over 300 of Boston's elite who had come to honor George Wilson. Elizabeth sat in the front row, a study in dignified grief in her black Chanel, a quiet fury burning behind her eyes. At precisely 2 o'clock, the heavy chapel doors groaned open. 2 figures stood silhouetted against the light. Caroline, in a new Chanel suit, a diamond brooch glinting fiercely. Michael, impeccably tailored. But the money couldn't hide the weariness in Caroline's posture, the gray in Michael's hair, the shadow in their eyes. A shocked stillness gripped the room. They walked forward, Caroline's heels echoing with a hollow defiance. "It's been a while, dear sister." Elizabeth's entire body went rigid, a decade of rage crystallizing in her veins. "You have nerve showing up," she said, her voice so cold it made a nearby mourner flinch. "We're family," Caroline replied, her tone rehearsed, brittle. Her gaze drifted to their father's portrait beside the casket. Then, she raised her voice, cutting through the sanctified air. "About father's inheritance," she announced, oblivious to the collective intake of breath. "It should be split 3 ways, between us sisters and mother." The chapel froze. Lawyers fumbled with folders. A muted shockwave rippled through the crowd. "How dare you!" Elizabeth's shout was a blade, cleaving the silence. "Have you forgotten what you did? You stole $20 million from him and disappeared." Caroline met her gaze, a ghost of her old smirk playing on her lips. "The past," she said, with a weary, breathtaking audacity, "is the past." The slight lift of her shoulders carried a whisper of Parisian indifference. "Besides," Caroline said, her voice cool, "Michael moved the money. I knew nothing about it. Liar." The word tore from Elizabeth's throat as she lunged forward, only to be held back by her mother's surprisingly strong grip. Martha's hands, usually so steady, trembled against Elizabeth's arm. "Calm down." Martha's voice was low, a bedrock of quiet strength forged over a decade of silence. It was Michael who stepped into the tension, adjusting his tie with a familiar, calculated grace. The polished negotiator re-emerged. "Elizabeth, don't blame your sister." His tone was smooth, reasonable. "Leaving you was simply a matter of incompatibility, the best decision I ever made." Hot tears of fury blurred Elizabeth's vision. The old wound ripped open, raw and searing. Then, Martha spoke again. "Don't you know the truth?" Her question, soft yet clear, seemed to still the very air in the chapel. Every gaze snapped to her. The color drained from Caroline's face, and Michael's practiced composure cracked. "Mother?" Caroline's voice was a thin thread of sound. "That's enough." Martha rose. In her simple black dress, she commanded a stillness that hushed the room. "I have been silent for 10 years. It ends today." As if on cue, the heavy doors opened. 3 police officers entered with quiet authority. The lead detective, whose father had been George Wilson's oldest friend, walked directly to the front. "Michael Thompson, Caroline Wilson." His voice was formal, cutting through the stunned silence. "We need you to come with us for questioning." Caroline's knees buckled. Sweat traced lines through her immaculate makeup. Michael spun, seeking an escape, but found his path blocked. Then, Martha drew a worn, yellowed envelope from her purse. The handwriting on it was unmistakably George's, to be opened in 10 years. A collective breath was held. The stained glass light painted the scene in surreal hues, a funeral transformed into a courtroom. "Mother, what is that?" Caroline whispered, her bravado utterly gone. "The truth your father spared you from," Martha said, her fingers gently breaking the seal. "He knew everything. 10 years ago, the embezzlement scheme, the leaked documents, the plan for the $20 million. He had the security logs, the transfer records, all of it." Elizabeth felt the world tilt. "Why?" she gasped. "Why didn't he stop them? Why didn't you?" Martha's eyes glistened. He was protecting Caroline. An arrest, a scandal, he believed it would destroy her life forever. The money, he decided to let it go. A final, desperate gift, in hopes it would satisfy them and they would simply disappear. She looked at Caroline with profound sorrow. It was his greatest miscalculation. Caroline crumpled to the floor, a heap of Chanel tweed and shattered pride. He made me promise not to tell you, Elizabeth. Martha continued, her voice thick. He didn't want your life poisoned by hatred. He wanted you to be free. From the envelope, Martha withdrew a final, crisp document. This is his true will. As she began to read, Michael made a sudden, desperate dash. He was subdued and handcuffed before he reached the aisle. All assets of my estate I leave to my daughter, Elizabeth. Martha read, her voice gaining strength. For my daughter Caroline, I hold not an inheritance, but a hope that she may one day seek redemption. Should she choose a path of genuine atonement, it is my wish that Elizabeth, in her own time and judgment, may offer her the hand of a sister, not the wealth of a father. Martha then took out a single sheet of personal stationery, and this was for you both. To my beloved girls. I have wondered every day if silence was wisdom or cowardice. Elizabeth, your strength has been my solace. Caroline, my heart breaks for the light you lost. No mistake is beyond mending. You are both my daughters. I hold the hope, against all odds, that our family may one day find its way whole again. With all my love. Father. Elizabeth received the letter with trembling hands, her tears now falling freely, cleansing, painful, healing. We have the warrants, the detective stated. The charges were listed: grand larceny, conspiracy, breach of fiduciary duty. Caroline offered no resistance as she was helped to her feet, her eyes meeting Elizabeth's for a fleeting second, filled with a dawning, horrified clarity. The trial was swift. The evidence, George's meticulously preserved records, compounded by a decade of social media boasting, was insurmountable. Michael received 7 years. Caroline, showing her first true cooperation, was sentenced to 5, with full restitution ordered. Weeks after the sentencing, Elizabeth visited the Suffolk County Detention Center. Behind the glass, Caroline looked small in her standard-issue uniform. I was jealous, she said, the words rushing out as if she'd been rehearsing them for 10 years. Of your life, your marriage, the way Father looked at you. I thought the money was what I needed to become you. Elizabeth listened, seeing for the first time the lonely, shadowed sister she had missed before. I've applied for a work release program, Caroline said, a fragile determination in her eyes. I want to recertify as a nurse, to work with patients like Dad, if they'll let me. It was the first statement that sounded like her sister, not the stranger who had stolen from them. Elizabeth poured her energy into Wilson Construction, launching a new division focused on luxury, compassionate senior living, a living memorial to her father. She found an unexpected partner in David Carter, a Harvard Medical School professor consulting on the project, whose kindness was a quiet counterpoint to her world. On a crisp autumn evening, he proposed. Elizabeth said yes, her heart finally feeling light, the ghosts receding. Their wedding at St. Paul's Cathedral was filled with light, not shadows. Martha beamed, her burden visibly lifted. That first Christmas, a letter arrived on heavy, plain paper. Dear Elizabeth, prison has been a long lesson in consequence. I am studying for my nursing exams. Listening to the stories here, I understand now the true cost of what I took. It was never just the money. I broke a family. I saw your wedding photo. You looked radiant. I was happy for you, truly. It was a strange feeling, to feel joy for someone else again. Father believed in a future I couldn't see. I am trying, one day at a time, to become someone who might have deserved that faith. Maybe one day, we can sit in the same room again, as sisters. With hope. Caroline. Elizabeth read it by the window, the city lights twinkling below. She looked at a photograph of her father on the mantel. You were right to hope, she whispered. 2 years later, Caroline Wilson, having earned her nursing recertification and a recommendation for early parole, walked out into the Boston cold. Her first stop was the cemetery. She placed a bouquet of white Casablanca lilies on the grave. I'm home, Dad, she murmured, her voice soft but steady. A few steps back, Elizabeth stood with David and Martha, a new constellation of family. They did not embrace, not yet, but they stood together under the vast, forgiving sky. Elizabeth took her mother's hand. The long winter was finally over. The ground was hard, but beneath it, there was the faint, Undeniable promise of something new, ready to grow.